Is it too much to ask someone to respect you, to treat you with compassion, to see you as equally important in the relationship? Is that too much? No, I don't think that's too much. And I think a lot of, especially women, I'm not saying men don't get caught in this. I know they do, but especially as women, I think we have been told that our feelings don't matter, that our needs shouldn't be primary in the relationship, that our job is to serve the emotional health of the house. And I think that we need to start out with serving the emotional health of ourselves first, and then all the other relationships that come in our lives, including our family and our loved ones.
Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your divorce survival guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back, and now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact. Hey everyone, welcome back. So, today, Dr. Kerry McAvoy is returning to the show. And this is a favorite when she's been on in the past. And so I wanted to have her back to talk about what it really means to heal from narcissistic abuse, not just from an intellectual standpoint, but healing your nervous system and your relationships and your relationship to yourself. I love having these conversations with Dr. Kerry. One of the things we talk about in this episode is how women have been conditioned to serve and to disappear and to manage the emotions of everyone around us just to maintain the illusion of peace. We get into some really deep stuff around this, so let's just dive right in today to my conversation with Dr. Kerry McAvoy. Kerry, thank you so much for coming back on the show and talking with us all things healing from narcissistic abuse.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back, and I really deeply appreciate it. It is a passion of mine, and I think it's something that is so timely. We really need to keep increasing the awareness around this topic.
It is so timely. Why is it so timely?
Well, first of all, partly because of just the state of our country and the fact that I think we're focusing more and more on healthiness, that we're realizing that we have gotten some things wrong about what to expect in a relationship. And now we're asking ourselves, what should we expect? What's normal to expect? And so it's good that we keep thinking about these things. I think that years past, we've put up with less than type of relationships that we probably shouldn't have. And now, yes, do we expect more? We do. But is it reasonable to expect more? I think it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's just so interesting, I think, from like a, systems perspective, how this thing is sort of raising its ugly head. It's being played out on the national stage. It's being exacerbated in our homes. It's getting bigger and bigger, right? And we're having to work harder and harder against this force. And it is really tiring for women, for people who are really trying to push back against this. It's really tiring.
It is. And I see a lot of people asking the question, are they expecting too much?
Yes, right.
And that question kind of concerns me. Now, I'm not talking about somebody who's struggling around maybe luxuries and being the center of the world and pampered. I'm not, but is it too much to ask someone to respect you, to treat you with compassion, to see you as equally important in the relationship? Is that too much? No, I don't think that's too much. And I think a lot of, especially women, I'm not saying men don't get caught in this. I know they do, but especially as women, I think we have been told that our feelings don't matter, that our needs shouldn't be primary in the relationship, that our job is to serve the emotional health of the house. And I think that we need to start out with serving the emotional health of ourselves first, and then all the other relationships that come in our lives, including our family and our loved ones.
Yes. And I also think there's something really powerful for women now, recognizing that I would rather, and I'll speak for myself, and I would rather be alone because I'm good alone than be in a relationship that doesn't provide those things for me.
Yeah, but you made a step there, Kate, that I suspect that a lot of people haven't. In fact, I know that I hear this all the time, and that is you developed a relationship with yourself.
That's right.
And I think a lot of us haven't done that. We don't even know that we haven't done that. I know that I didn't do it. I didn't
I
know
didn't.
that. Yeah, I thought that if the relationship was good, then I was good because the relationship was going to take care of me. But what
Right.
I failed to recognize was that, yes, in childhood, that should happen, ideally. It doesn't always, often it doesn't. But when we hit to adulthood, if we've had a good childhood that's able to do that, we should have learned to do that for ourselves. But most of us walk into the relationships thinking, I'm going to center this other person. And then by centering them, they're going to center me. And this mutuality is going to really meet my needs. And that's not what happens. And we end up finding out that we're last. We often end up being betrayed because they betray us and then we betray ourselves. We don't recognize that we haven't really centered ourselves. Now, I don't mean be selfish, but I mean say, if I'm sick, am I meeting my needs to take care of myself that I'm sick? Or am I waiting for my partner to recognize that I'm sick to slow down and sort of check in on me? I mean, those are two very profoundly different places.
Yes, absolutely. And to be clear, the journey for me and for you as well, I know, in actually recognizing that I had a self
Yeah.
that I had been neglecting my whole life and was never fostered or nurtured as a child growing up.
Right.
All of these things, like I was completely disconnected. So the idea of me having this self that I could say, I'm actually good by myself was a decades long process. Yeah, this was not a like, oh yeah, I'm good. Like what?
It is a process. In fact, I just recently have been struggling with some health issues. And normally the old fashioned me would have been, I get an update on my health situation and I would have called somebody for reassurance
Mm,
and then processed it, sort of finding the comfort, finding the security outside of myself. I wouldn't have found it within myself. And just
mm,
recently I realized it's like, I haven't needed to call anybody. I'm processing this myself and I'm knowing how to manage this with myself. I know how to show up for myself. I know how to even, give myself things, set limits for myself.
hmm
But before I would have always found that outside of myself. But part of this just shift that I've made since leaving that last relationship about 6 years ago has been really making a friendship with me. And that's how I term it because that helps me. Like, what's a relationship with me? I'm always in a relationship. I'm me with me all the time. Isn't that a relationship? But so for me to sort of put it in the terms of a friendship, that helps me think about it differently.
Right. You're learning to be kind to yourself,
Right.
listening to your self talk. I mean, most of us don't hear our self talk. We don't hear the inner critic because it's
Right.
just running us. I also think it's important to note that I don't think you are talking about, and so I can handle this all by myself and I don't need anybody to.
Absolutely not.
There's appropriate outreach, and then there's outreach that might be more codependent or
Right.
reliant. Because then I think that once you are in that friendship with yourself, then you can, with a health issue or something like that, instead of reaching out for like, help me process, it's okay, I've processed it. What do I need? Oh, actually, I do need someone to go grocery shopping for me this week.
Right, right, exactly. No, I'm not advocating hyper independence. In
Hmm.
fact, actually, I think what happens in toxic relationships is that our partner pushes us for hyper independence, which is really what it is. It's alienation and isolation. When
Hmm.
there is nobody showing up, we're insecure, we're shaky, we're not feeling stable, but there's no one going to help us. So we just say, I'm going it alone. There's because I only have myself. And then we just don't even know how to ask for help because we get into that position. I struggle with the terminology of codependency. I know you and I differ a little bit on that. Codependency to me is seeking the approval of somebody else as a way to reassure yourself. And I differentiate that from people pleasing, which is a fawning response that comes out of surviving a toxic relationship in which you're in danger. So you've learned to sort of placate the toxic person to keep them from attacking you, or from somehow making things worse or increasing the conflict. Codependency is really about, I know I'm okay because other people say I'm okay. And people pleasing is, I'm okay because these people aren't escalating and I'm making sure that I'm keeping them regulated by being their regulation. I'm functioning for them.
Yes. I actually don't think we differ. I think I appreciate the differentiation, because I 100% agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
And codependency, I believe, is also really comes out of these learned behaviors from childhood neglect or enmeshment, or, all of those things. And these are the patterns these are the behaviors that we learn. I don't think it's a bad word. Like, I know that there are some people out there that are like coaches that are be like, we don't use that word because it's sort of denigrating. And I'm like, it is so informative. There is so much information in actually uncovering what those behavior patterns are, an indication of where we might need some healing.
In the book, David Schnarf, I know it's a very strange last name. It's spelt very odd. It's Schnarch. David Schnarf wrote the book, The Passionate Marriage. And in it, he talks about this. Interdependence is a good word. He would call that self-differentiation. And he kind of likens it to what happens at a cellular level. When a cell divides, it creates a new cell, and the new cell takes on characteristics of the parent cell. But what happens with most of us is that we don't really differentiate. Well, we get into what he calls emotional fusion with another person. Now, that can look like a whole lot of range of things, from all the way from we then use them to prop our insecurities up, manage everything that we're not feeling really good about, things that we feel kind of overwhelmed by, to also, though, that fusion can be hatred, the binds that we get into people where we just sort of can't stop thinking about them, we're enraged by them, we're caught up around them. So it's what it is. It's a failure to really know how to show up and for yourself in a way that knows how to request help when you need it, but also knows how to sort of stabilize yourself in those insecure moments. Like a great example is how many times we get into a place, whatever reason, that we feel sort of shaky about how we look, and we'll say, does this outfit make me look fat? That's a moment of insecurity. And we're asking the other person, and in that moment, to function for us. Because we don't know how to sort of say to ourselves, you know what, even if maybe it's not perfect on me today, I'm still me, and that's a good thing. Because we don't know how to get to that place, we then look to other people to do that. A good, healthy interdependence would say, you know what, I'm in a place where I need help and I'm going to reach out for help, but I also know how to soothe myself around things that are just normal insecurities and anxieties. And that's tricky. It gets really tricky because when you're in a toxic relationship with somebody, you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't know how to support themselves. So essentially what happens is when you see those like older buildings with scaffolding up around them and they're like working on the facade or whatever, sometimes they're actually holding them up, they become the support. That's what happens. The partner in these relationships become the scaffolding to hold the person with the personality disorder together. And they look to us for that. But meanwhile, there's no reciprocity. They're not pouring into us and nurturing us and really coming through for us. They're using us, they're utilizing us. And so it ends up being kind of more of this one-way street. And except when you start to think of leaving, and then they pull you back in, kind of convincing you that things will be all right, not because they love you, but because they don't want to lose the stability of the relationship, at least not yet. But we get real confused about all of that.
Well, of course, because when you are the it's like, you can't read the label from inside the jar. So when you are the scaffolding, right, it feels like intimacy. It feels like, oh, they rely on me, or they're, well, this is just the way we are, or whatever it is that you're getting out of it or from it, whether that's almost, validation of your existence, right? Of your importance in the world, or the familiarity of the toxicity from childhood, right? We can't see it often when we're so busy being the ones holding everything together. Right?
Right. Because we've gotten used to finding it in those moments of small reassurances from them that we then interpret that as love. And we miss the fact that there's all this conflicting information they're also giving us, which says they're selfish, they're very not you focused, they're very self-focused, they're very they're users, they're takers. We miss the
Yes.
fact, a lot of disrespect.
Yeah.
They minimize us. They really don't allow us to show up in that space. And we get so used to it that over time, maybe because the childhood was similar to that, maybe it's because it's been habituated, but also because of the trauma bond, because of the increased sense of dependency that's gotten created in these relationships, that we learn to live on less and less support, less and less. It's actually not even really respect or love, it's idealization.
Yeah.
We don't know that we're being idealized, but they don't act. I mean, a person who sees you wholly. They see you, all your good stuff, your bad stuff. They're able to hold your
Yeah.
messy self. And
Yes.
unfortunately, these people don't. There's no space for your messy self. So we miss the fact that this is an idealization. Oh, I know we have such a great moment. Isn't this perfect? Or I never met anybody like you. Or you know what? We're really good. When this is really good, we're really good. Why can't we be like this all the time? Well, life is not like that all the time. See, we miss that that's a form of idealization
Right.
because authentic reciprocal relationships that are built on healthiness allows us to be less than, allows us to fail, allows us to be ourselves. And these relationships just don't have the robustness, the healthiness to be able to do that.
Oh, so true. There's so much in there. I love when you said, like, when they talk about how, like, why can't it always be like this? Because first of all, that's mirroring something that you feel. Why can't it always be like this? Right?
Yeah.
Because I am attached to, in the trauma bond, I'm addicted to that high, right? I want that. I want to return to that high feeling of the togetherness and the connectedness, and that's what I'm after. But also, the only reason we get that is because they've deemed us to be in line, right?
Yes. I would say
Right. So it's
there's a
like,
hidden bad message in that
right.
message.
Why can't we always be like this? Meaning, why can't you always be perfect
Yes.
and not rock the boat and not have any of your own needs and not need anything from me?
Yes. It's why can't you not show up?
Yeah, right. Right. Why can't you be a robot and not a human?
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. And
Right.
right, we focus on I do like those moments. They're really great moments. They do feel fantastic. And we would love to live in that perpetually. It's sort of like being on vacation and never coming home.
Right.
It'd be
Sounds
amazing to
great.
always live on vacation. I'd like that too. But that's not real life. And here's a good test that I encourage people to ask their partners. And it is to say, why do you love me? Ask them, why do you love me? And then listen to what they say. Now, a healthy relationship is going to identify things about you. I love your laugh. You have such a great sense of humor. The way you show up for the kids, or the way that you just have this integrity, that's amazing. Or you're so complex, and I just find you, like, it's just fascinating being with you. And I just find everything kind of about you fascinating. Versus, I love the way that you make me feel. I love the way that you keep the house. I love your cooking, or whatever that is. But
Right.
one is more about you, a celebration of
That's
you,
right.
and one's more about the way that you serve.
That's
And
right.
when we get into these idealization, it's the same thing. It's kind of this glowy, um, idyllic, honeymoon feeling thing, but it's not living in the reality of who we are morning in, morning out, who we are when we fail, who we are when it's a bad day, who we are when we've been sick. That's where love really shows up. It's the behaviors, what people do. And you're going to find people who have character disturbances really struggle to know how to do that. That's just not in their wheelhouse. Between their lack of empathy and their struggle with impulse control and the fact that they love to avoid responsibility, these things are just things that they're going to struggle to be able to show up in a relationship. But we get confused because we need to be needed so bad that we miss the fact that this isn't really being accepted and loved. This is really about serving and being useful to somebody.
Yes. 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 It's indentured, it's servitude. That's what it is. It's servitude.
Yeah. My ex, I was horrified when I heard this. I mean, I was so new, and I was in this relationship, and even though as a psychologist, you'd think, why would I not, I don't know, how did I miss all of this? But he described the perfect woman, and that was somebody who slept believe it or not, he said this, foot in his bed and served on him 24 hours a day. And I'm thinking, well, honey, you just described a robot. That's not a real person. Nobody does that.
Right.
I mean, I'm not even for sure why we're in a relationship then, because that's just so impossible. That's not going to ever, ever happen. How did I miss that? Because the idealization was so amazing that I loved the way that it felt, and I didn't realize it wasn't real.
And, what you just said reminds me, this is like a trad wife. This whole trad wife. So interesting that this is surfacing and, coming about at this particular juncture in our sort of, sociological point of time.
Or how many men say they wish they could go back to the 1950s, and like, really?
Right.
I mean, that was not a good period of time for a lot of us. Of us,
except for white men,
white cis men, exactly.
Cis white men, exactly. They had it all. It is interesting. This, like, I just want you to serve me, and then you have this trad wife movement of women actually buying into it and doing
Did you
it.
see? There's a TV show that I normally don't watch network TV, but I happen to catch that there's a TV show called The Secret Lives of the Mormon Wives. I'm like, oh my goodness.
And by the way, like, those are some, I think I tried to watch the first episode and I got halfway in and I was like, I literally can't because I don't know. It was all sex. It was all like,
well, the episode I caught was not, but I think the only way they're surviving is they're living through each other because they have a relationship, and the dramas with each other, they're not really expecting a whole lot from their partner other than a very wonderful lifestyle, which obviously they have amazing lifestyles that are not in line with most of us. But yeah, right. I think that's the danger. Or even think of the TikTokers that are very, very big. I know one of them is Nara Smith, who's also, I think, in the Mormon church as well. But she looks gorgeous and it's a beautiful life, but I can't imagine making homemade Cheerios for my kids. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jesus that would be Christ. A whole morning sort of adventure just to have a meal. I just don't quite get that.
No, I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. And look, I mean, I also think that there are, women who, like, being a wife and mother is genuinely right. They're what they want. But there's a way to do that where you're not subjugated and you're not completely, being taken advantage of and, financially disenfranchised and trapped.
Right.
So guys, we all know divorce is hard. Co-parenting, even harder. That's why most of my clients use our Family Wizard, the #1 most referred co-parenting app out there. Our Family Wizard eliminates misunderstandings with a secure, uneditable messaging system, which is the best way to document communication for court. If you need to share schedules, expenses, or important updates, it's all in one place. No more he said, she said. Plus, with features like Tone Meter and detailed activity logs, it helps keep communication civil and accountable. When people know their messages are permanently recorded and reviewable, they tend to stay more in line. Courts, attorneys, and therapists recommend it because it works, helping co-parents stay organized and reduce conflict. So, ready for smoother co-parenting? Go to kateanthony.com/OFW today and take control of your communication. That's kateanthony.com/OFW. Divorce is hard. No question about it. The uncertainty, the isolation, it can feel like you're drowning. But you don't have to go through this alone. There's a place where you can gather with other women going through divorce and get expert advice from professionals like me. Phoenix Rising, a divorce empowerment collective. Phoenix Rising is an ongoing group coaching program designed to walk you through some of the hardest parts of your divorce in community with other women who are going through it too. In Phoenix Rising, you get 3 live coaching sessions with me every month, plus a guest expert call with a top industry professional every month. You'll learn exactly what to do, when and how, but more importantly, you'll have a community of women who truly understand. Because when women come together and share their stories, something powerful happens. We rise, we gain strength, we reclaim our voices, and we move forward, not just surviving, but thriving. Inside Phoenix Rising, you'll get expert guidance, a safe and supportive space, and the kind of sisterhood that changes everything. Enrollment is always open, so join us at kateanthony.com/decided today. That's kateanthony.com/decided, and we will welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, it really comes back to this word I keep using as reciprocity.
That's right.
Does this person see you in the same way that you see them? Is there the amount of compassion that you're pouring into them? Are they also equally pouring into you? I mean, it's one thing to have somebody say, because something's bad's happening in your life and you're not around and available the way that I want, then I'm going to pout and be depressed and punish you by just being withdrawn and sullen, versus somebody who then says, oh my goodness, I see that you've been not yourself, or because work's really wearing you down, and then pours into you in the same way that you pour into them. Is there that kind of that mutual respect and mutual care for each other?
Yeah.
And I think that we often end up focusing on the fact that there's these nice little special moments that we miss, that this bigger problem, there's no continuity to the bigger problem. It's more of a one-way street.
Yes. I used to talk about how when I was married, it's many, many years ago, but when I was married, my ex was, and he still is, always sick. I mean, he always has something terribly wrong with him. And I was always the caretaker, the nurturer, all of the things, did everything I could to make him feel better. And when I would get sick, and by the way, it takes a lot to take me down. So if I'm sick, I'm really sick. Like, you're not hearing about it unless it's really bad. And when I would get sick, he would get so angry at me. And there was no caretaking. It was all like rage and how dare you? How dare you need to take care of yourself? You're depriving me of the caretaking that you usually provide for me.
Yeah, I saw that in my better relationship as well as in my less healthy relationship. I saw that same kind of that selfishness, which was sad because in my better relationship, when he became ill with cancer, he sort of had this big kind of revelatory moment where he said, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. You would have been really in trouble. I would not have known how to show up like that, it was great, but it was sort of not great because I didn't mean I got to experience that kind of love and mutuality. But healthy people really know how to hold space for each other. I know I've been using that word a lot today, but it really is about learning, by us learning to hold space for ourselves and realizing that it's okay for us to have bad days, for us to need something, for us to ask for something out of somebody else. In the same way that we show up for them, it's okay to expect them to show up for ourselves. And when we don't see this capacity in another person, we need to see that as a warning that this person may have serious limitations.
Yes. And heed it the first time, right? When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Given all of this, right, I want to just shift a little bit to healing, because first of all, do we ever heal from this? Is there a point at which we feel like, yeah, I'm good?
I don't think we ever arrive. I don't know if that's depressing to hear that. I think it's always a journey. I think
I'm glad
arriving.
You said that, because I was like, Because I still have a lot of issues with this.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
glad you said that. Because if you
No,
were like, yeah, we do, I'll be like, oh shit.
no.
There's something wrong.
I believe that I got this right, but Freud at the end of his life, which his goal was to make the unconscious mind conscious, and he realized as he approached near the end of his life that it was never going to happen either, that it was always going to be a process for him as well. So I think that we're always arriving, we're never arrived. But I think part of the healing, arriving, is becoming okay with our frailties, our weaknesses, our shame, really making a friendship with ourselves. So it is a process, and yes, a lot of it has to get worked out in relationships. I think there's another sort of a myth out there, and that is you need to heal on your own. And then when you get good enough, then you can go into a relationship with somebody. I'm going to tell you, relationships activate us.
That's
You're
right.
not going to know where the minefields are until someone steps on one and you're like, oh, yeah, I don't know how to deal with conflict very well. Or I get really scared when people get angry. I think that's one that I'm working on right now, is that I find that I get real shaky and struggle making someone unhappy with me. And I'm learning to, like, you know what? Okay, play devil's advocate. Worst case scenario, I lose the relationship. Well, I've learned how to be on my own, so it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. That tells me something about the other person, not a lot about me. But I also have learned that I get angry with people and the relationships survive. That's just part of the healing. But when we are in these toxic relationships, because it's so bad and they are so punitive and it feels very all or nothing, that we have learned that there's certain things that we're just very scared of, very hesitant around. And so we try to avoid them. Part of healing is learning how to embrace all of that as we get more familiar and learn that resilient relationships really allow more space, allow more of us to show up and to get comfortable with that. But it takes being in a relationship often, and it doesn't have to be someone romantic. I hope people don't hear me say that, because I practice a lot with my own grown sons or my good friendships. But we need to take risks and practice showing up, practice new boundaries, practice asking for what we need, practice allowing ourselves to be in different emotional states with people, being vulnerable with people, and see what happens. Get comfortable with ourselves as we see their comfortableness with us.
Yeah. I like that we never arrive, right? There's not this, panacea, this brass ring, right? I always say, like, you'll stop growing when you're dead. Like, that's
Exactly.
the deal, right?
Exactly.
The journey is the point, and that is the healing. And also, these are really, really, really deep scars for
They
some.
really are, because one of the things I see that happens with people is they end up they take sort of Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, which is really as stages of loss, stages of ending something, and acting like it's a linear process that we move from one discrete stage to the next. No, it does not work like that. It's more like a ball of yarn that's knotted and a mess.
Yes.
And they sort of all happen, sometimes together, sometimes not together. Sometimes there's long phases in between. Sometimes we think, do we ever get over? Sometimes we get a reactivation. It sort of makes us feel like we've taken a step back, but it's not. People sort of see this as pass fail. There's no pass fail to this. It's just there's what is.
That's right.
Becoming comfortable with that really, it just really helps us create more permission for ourselves to just experience the experience instead of judging ourselves, because we get into this bad habit of judging ourselves because we got judged. We end up feeling like we had to conform to a box in order to avoid the conflict, keep things quiet in the house, keep this person's moods in check. And so we then became hypercritical of ourselves, thinking there's a right way and a wrong way. Plus, they tell us, I got told there's a right way and wrong way to hang clothes in the closet, despite the fact that I raised a family for how many years? Like 30 years. So we get really used to having this this kind of excessive management style, this micromanagement. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So then we start to micromanage ourselves, thinking there's a right way to do this when we get out. No, there's not. There's just your way. And your way is going to look different than the next person's way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is that giving yourself grace that you will get, especially when the person that has been so toxic is somebody that you have to continue and maintain a relationship with at some level because you have children with them, or because you've just chosen to, right? But then something happens, you get reactivated. And I know for me, when my ex and I ended up having a good friendship and a really, good relationship. But like just this past week, a couple of days ago, he did something that absolutely triggered me. He was absolutely abusive and horrible. And we were at lunch and I literally got up from the table and I left. And I was like, I don't do this with you anymore. And I walked out. I feel like the shame and I thought you were past that. And, you shouldn't have had a friendship with him at all because look what it did. It made you vulnerable, blah, like all of that, blah, 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 beating myself up. Not helpful. You're right.
No, and it's that's back to that black and white thinking. That's a moment. I suspect that's where you got, Kate, is you eventually said, you know what? I know this is one of his areas that's not pleasant. It's not an area I'm going to be okay with.
Nope.
I did. I exercised a boundary that set the limit and stopped it. I protected myself.
That's right.
That doesn't mean we have to end the relationship sometimes with some people. Now we have to take it by person, but
right.
And also situation by situation, because there are all sorts of extenuating circumstances that really can complicate the picture. But it isn't about no one's going to ever treat me this way again. No, that's not what it's about. It's that when it happens, I have a different way of handling it.
That's right. Because, for however many years when we were together, I would have stayed and argued for my humanity, really.
Right.
And this time I picked up my humanity and walked out the door.
You gave your humanity to you and she walked out the door.
That's right. And then he texted me some like really lame half-assed apology and I haven't responded yet, not because I'm punishing him, but because I'm actually processing for myself. And by the way, it's been 2 days. Mm-hmm. And in the past, I would have responded immediately or I would have smoothed it over because I don't want him to be upset, right? No, I'm not ready to respond.
And I love that. That circles back to what we were talking about earlier today, which is you're letting him handle his anxiety or not on his own. It's his problem, not your problem.
Right.
And you're still managing yours. You don't have a good handle on it yet. I'm the same. It takes me days, sometimes a week or more to figure out what I think, how I feel, what do I want to do about it.
Yep.
But you're still like in that processing, respecting your own journey. And that's, I think, what healthiness looks like. That's back to that differentiation that Dr. Snarf talks about versus emotional fusion. The examples of like checking in with him, smoothing it over, all of that's examples of emotional fusion. When we're like, oh, okay, be okay, so that I can feel okay because you're okay. Versus like, you know what, even if he's not okay, it's not the end of the world, it's not my problem. I'm going to work on me and get myself okay.
That's right. And because of the boundary that I need to set is so clear, I have to get okay before I can set that boundary. Otherwise, I'm, tap dancing around it or what have you. What do you feel like so many people get wrong about this, the healing aspect of this? Do you feel like there's something that we're always getting wrong? Is it that linear aspect or?
That's a big one. And they think it's linear. So they're always evaluating themselves like, oh, today is a 2-step forward day. And then they have a bad day. Like, no, I'm right back at the beginning. No, you're not at the beginning. Right. You had a step back. It's not the same. And I end up finding that it's sort of like, it's not a straight line up, like this gorgeous, like we climb ourselves out. It's this sort of up and down, and it gets, better and better over time, but it's still an up and down process. So that's one of the big errors, is that we hold ourselves to the strict line, like we're weighing ourselves in on a diet every week. Like, how am I doing today? How am I doing today? We need to be just chill and instead sort of be with ourselves in the emotional space. I think the other thing that people get wrong about this process is that we think there's an end, and there isn't. It's always a journey. We're always rediscovering new parts of ourselves. No one's ever perfectly secure. Let's just say no one ever is perfectly secure. It's always a journey where you're discovering more and more of yourself, and in this, life, this messy life. I think the other thing that people get wrong about this experience is that they're shocked at how much effort it takes to get this person literally from living inside their head.
Yes.
When we're in these relationships, we have centered this person's well-being as a way to maintain safety. Really think about what I just said there.
Yeah, say that again.
The only way for us to stay safe in that relationship, not to feel at threat, and it didn't even work very well. Not to feel exploited, not to feel neglected, not to feel dismissed, not to feel invalidated, was to center them and everything they wanted and needed. We centered their time, their hobbies, their food selections, their way of life, their priorities, their values. We centered them. And when we get out of the relationship, we still have that as part of ourselves. It's been integrated into us because that's how we learn to survive. So they kind of became part of the fabric of our mental space.
Yes.
It takes a long time for us to realize we aren't living with them anymore. And we don't need to worry about them. I see a lot of survivors continue to sort of monitor this other person. Like, what are they doing? How well are they doing? Are they aware of me? What do they think of me? Are they happy? Are they not happy? We do that. And part of it is still because of this hypervigilance that we got into to keep safe.
Yes.
And that takes a long time to undo. And again, it's almost like, it's like they kind of have these barbs that they've thrown into us, and we have to pick them out one by one and really change the frame in a significant way. One of the ways in which mine got into me it was already a vulnerability, was about my appearance, my self-image. It was already damaged before I got into the relationship. And then, of course, he damaged it a whole lot further. And then today, sometimes when I put a new outfit on or try something on, I'd like, he wouldn't like this. Or I don't feel good. What would he think of me in this compared to the other women? Because he was a serial cheater. Right. And I have to say, it doesn't matter. He's not a part of my life. And what really matters is, how do I feel in my skin? That's what matters.
Right. That's right.
And then what creates love and safety is how I accept myself and realize that people love me for who I am, not how I look and show up. And so I have to literally, just like you pry a barb out of something that got caught, you have to work it free. And it may take repetition of time in order to get free from these ways in which they've really influenced our ways that we see ourselves.
Yeah. And this is the neural pathways, right?
Yes.
It is that groove is so deep, and we just fall right into it every time. And so it takes intentional effort to shift it and build new neural pathways. And it has to be done over and over and over and over again before the groove is deep enough.
Exactly. And because it's also a reframing of ourselves. We begin to see ourselves through their lens.
Right. It's that fusion.
It is. Yes. It is. And we have to then to literally get a new frame for ourselves. In the beginning, it feels sort of false and not very powerful, but that's normal. That's part of the process. But it's through the repetition of this reframing, I'm good because I'm me. I'm good because look at the way that this amazing body has served me all these years. Look at the things that it has done. Look, how do I feel about other people that I love? Are these things that I notice? Do I judge them on these things? No, I don't. It takes that constant reframing over time for us to begin to slowly change the frame from that person's frame to our new frame.
I love the way you put that, because I just see so much in that of, and it's from childhood, right? Yeah. It's from the relationships. And often we get into relationships because they mirror the frames from our childhoods, right? They match up, they align. It's like, oh no, I know this, right? Yeah. I married someone who was incredibly critical of my looks and my body when I was raised with by somebody who was incredibly critical of my looks and my body. And so, of course, those frames lined up perfectly. And the process of having no judgment on myself, or, less and less, right? That's sort of taking that back for myself, so that when I put on an outfit, I'm looking at myself more objectively, more kindly, more, right? One of the things that I did for myself, because I refused to wear shorts, right? For a long time, refused to wear shorts. And I started noticing women wearing shorts whose maybe they had cellulite, maybe they weren't skinny, mini, perfectly, long legs, whatever. And whenever I would see a woman wearing shorts who might be deemed, not quote, not supposed to by society or whoever, I would notice my response to them. Like, how am I judging this woman? And almost always my response was, fuck yeah. fuck yeah, look at you. You
Yeah,
go
go
on
girl,
with
you
your
go.
badass self. And then I was
Right,
like, and so why am I not wearing shorts when it's
right,
800
right,
degrees out?
right.
Right.
In
And that
fact, that's
was
one of the things about the transparency on social media that I like is more and more people are, I mean, I don't know if you watch my content, but there's days that I'm out, I look rough. I'm not even wearing a
absolutely.
wig. I have a hat on. I have no makeup on, and I'm just talking. And I love the fact that we're giving ourselves permission just to show up. People
Yes.
who like me for me. They're not liking the pretty dressed up me. They're liking me.
That's
Can I
right.
circle back to one thing though? You know,
Yes, I would love it.
there's a study looking at all the victims of narcissistic abuse. And it was 2014 out of Purdue University, run by Sandra Brown. Actually, only 1/3 of the population had problems in childhood or previous trauma. 2/3 of the group did not. It was their personality qualities that made them susceptible to these relationships. So sometimes our damaged self-esteem literally comes out of that
Yes.
relationship,
Yeah.
out of just trying to survive somebody who's just we've learned, and it's really like the pot of boiling water with the frog.
Yep.
It's been slowly introduced, so we don't recognize in the beginning that we're being asked to conform.
Yeah.
From all the way to I'm looking for somebody who doesn't have wants no drama, not realizing that we're being told don't be disruptive.
That's
To then,
right.
or when you then drive in a certain way and you hear, you know, honey, if you thought about doing it this way, it might work better. Realizing I'm a grown adult who's had driving lessons, and you're a grown adult who's had the same amount of lessons and experience driving as I. Why would you know better? You know,
Yep.
it's the slow
Yep.
indoctrination. That's what it
That's
is.
right.
It's indoctrination
Yeah.
that makes us feel like we do less, we say less, we don't show up, we numb our feelings, we try to keep the peace, we don't push a point, we listen for what they want and only do what they want. I mean, we
Yes.
lose ourselves over time. So
Yes.
I want people to think, because one of the things I really struggle with is it's not always broken people attract broken
Yes.
people.
No,
Sometimes it is agreeable, accepting, loving, trusting people who
mhm.
attract broken people.
I love that you said that, and I really appreciate it because so much. Now, personally, I was primed for it,
Oh,
right?
I was too. So
But
I fit in that third group. Yes.
right.
That 1/3 group. Yeah.
But I do think that the messaging, especially for women, of being agreeable, not having too many needs, we should, I was literally just on the phone with the woman who created the burned haystack
Yes.
method,
Yes. Jenny
right?
Young.
Jenny Young. So
Mhm.
Jenny and I were just talking about this, and we were talking about how, we just the dating advice, the advice that women are given is don't be, don't let him, give him a chance, you don't know, or just, give him a hint that this is, or, what he said this, but like, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
And so this is the messaging that we are given. And so, of course, when people start treating us poorly, we're like, oh, he didn't really mean it. Or, he just, well, he just maybe had a bad day. Right. We're always apologizing and that's even if we're healthy, the messaging that we're given as women in the world going into relationships is that like we shouldn't matter and our needs shouldn't matter and we should just minimize all the bad behavior.
Yeah, exactly. It's back to that indoctrination or introduction. I remember
Mhm.
clearly when we were still in the dating, we were engaged, getting close to getting married, and I was putting some patio furniture together, doing it my way in the garage,
Mhm.
and it wasn't quite going right. And I'll remember he came in and he sort of like, "Did you count the parts?" No. Why is the instructions not out? Why aren't you looking at, and literally like made me backtrack back to as if I was starting over, as if I was in school and he was the teacher. Now, because I was nice and didn't want to be conflictual, I didn't make this a big deal. But imagine for a moment, let's turn the tables. Can you imagine if I went in and he was doing something and I literally stopped him, made him backtrack and start over again?
Mhm.
Never would have flown. Never, I
Never.
wouldn't even have dreamed of doing that. I'm not saying every woman's like me, but a lot of us would do that. But it's this sort of like what I failed to see was this person is arrogant. He's acting superior. He's failing to respect my process, which is different than his. There's this black and white thinking.
Mhm.
And there's just an error of disrespect that I will eventually become contempt. And that's extremely problematic.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I love, Jenny's philosophy is, burn it down.
Yeah, I love Block to Burn. I follow her. I've been actually in her small group that she ran. She ran a small group over the summer of 20 people. It was really wonderful. Learned a lot.
Oh God, I love her. I love her. I love this sort of, it's so freeing. It's like, right? Block to burn. Block, what? No, no, we're not doing that. Right.
Exactly.
And we're moving on. And like, what a radical concept for us as women.
Right.
Radical. Kerry, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so, so much. Where can everyone find you and follow you and consume all of your content?
The best place to find me is on YouTube at Kerry McAvoy, Ph.D., but you can find me everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Kerry McAvoy, Ph.D., as well as my website. And thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here as well. It was wonderful. A great, fascinating discussion today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at the Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.